Okay, so by way of background, the big picture is that video is becoming a more and more important part of the world. There are lots of data types out there. There's text, there's images, there's 3D graphics, all kinds of data. And the reality is that the amount of video data that is being generated and consumed is now starting to dwarf the other categories of data. Um, you can see some of that in hardware for storage, where probably over a quarter of the hardware purchased today is simply for storing video, but especially in terms of internet bandwidth, where three-quarters of the internet bandwidth that is being used today is being consumed by video. And in fact, as another example, over $1 billion a year is spent on software just for post-production and generating all that video. Never mind the distribution, the OTT, the CMSs, all that stuff. So just a huge amount of global resources are being devoted to this medium. And there are, of course, reasons for that. One of them is that people are watching a lot of video, and they're watching it in new ways using over-the-top services. In particular, everybody has bandwidth, everybody has mobile devices, and so we're not all just sitting at home waiting for the nightly news and the lineup of just a few channels. As everyone knows, the majority of TV watching or video watching today is done outside of that framework. And in fact, as a result, there's been just an explosion in the number of scripted series, in reality shows, in all kinds of content, documentary footage and stuff, to the point where if you add up the production budgets of just these four companies, it comes close to $20 billion, which is a pretty staggering number. And again, that's outside the traditional studio system. It's outside the traditional networks. So that's one data point. Another one is that nearly every Fortune 500 company, nearly every sports team, huge numbers of churches, universities, etc., are all treating video as a central strategic medium. So all of this content has to be made somewhere, and the storage and the bandwidth for that are just growing exponentially. What we see from our point of view is that the kind of work that we help our customers do is now becoming very practical and potentially very widespread. So if you look back 5 years when we founded Axle, managing videos was a pretty exotic thing. Obviously, I had some experience, as did some of my colleagues at Avid, with the Interplay and Media Central products. At that time, we had about 1,500 customers. Today, there may be nearly twice as many, but it's still not a lot of teams that use that out of the what are today 250,000 video post-production teams in the world. So let's say fewer than 5,000 of them are using really enterprise-style MAMs, and then there's another 5,000 or so that are using workgroup MAMs. But well over 90% of these teams don't use any kind of media management at all. Part of that is because the cost has been too high. Like if you just wanted to get shared storage alone, that could be, in the past, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's now come down a lot to where it's tens of thousands, and even in many cases under $10,000 to get started with very effective shared storage. In addition, things like the cloud and AI, which were just buzzwords a couple of years ago, are becoming real options. And so you have on-premise storage becoming much more affordable, and then the technologies for managing and archive the media also becoming much more affordable. So as the cost comes dramatically down, we can expect that the adoption is going to continue to rise, and that we figure that 5 years from now, instead of only about 10,000 teams worldwide having this kind of technology, we expect that over 50,000 teams will in fact be using this kind of technology. And that's a huge amount of growth, but it still represents at that point only probably about 10% of the people that could benefit from it. So the majority of video teams, even 5 years from now, will not be using media management of this, sort of any kind, and will be relying more on just a traditional stack of hard drives, which we'll talk about next. So basically, Axle is designed to help you search and manage video. And the traditional approach is to basically put a bunch of hard drives in a closet and put sticky notes or labels on them. And if you need footage from 2014, you grab the hard drive that says 2014 and you connect it up with Thunderbolt and you see what's on it. In a way, it's not that different from the old days of VTRs, where you would have a closet full of tapes. The only difference is that in the case of the drives, they're a little more random access, right? You don't have to hit the fast forward button and jog and shuttle your way through the material. You can actually jump to the right spot if you know where it is. So the reality is that for most people, they don't know where it is, and so those drives are not a whole lot more searchable than the closet full of professional VTR tapes. So what we do with Axle is it's and many of you may know this. I'm noticing some familiar names on the line. So some of you I know are customers already, which we really appreciate. Basically, Axle is radically simple media management. It lets you sweep through all the material that you have, make viewable proxies of all of it. It's accessible through a web browser, both on Macs and PCs, as well as portable mobile devices. And it doesn't disrupt the way you store the material or your existing workflows. We have over 400 customers worldwide, including a lot of really big names. And we're pretty thrilled, actually. In the last year or two, we've been getting more and more large content producers jumping on board, not because they're using Axle in an enterprise sense, but because they're decentralizing, and a lot more of their production is happening in small and mid-sized teams where our product can really make a difference. They're not giving up on the idea of an expensive centralized MAM, many of which cost $1 million or more. But they're saying, wait a minute, going forward, more and more of what we produce is being done by these smaller teams who basically submit a finished show, and rather than make them bring everything back to headquarters and work on it here, we'd much rather they worked on it closer to where they're shooting, closer to where their freelancers are. So that's driving a lot of opportunities for us in the larger companies, as well as, of course, large companies that don't specialize in broadcasting. So, we have a lot of corporate customers, top 5 accounting firms, sports teams, universities, etc. And typically their video teams are less than 20 people each, but they still have to get a lot of material out. So this is what the user interface looks like on an iPad. It looks very similar on a desktop device, and here you see it in a viewing mode where there's a clip and some comments and subclips below that. We also support mobile devices like the iPhone and Android, and this is what the user interface looks like there. Patrice will be talking about this, and of course we'll be demoing it, so I won't spend a lot of time on this. Now, the big new development for us in the last year has been this extension of what we do into AI, because historically the challenge was you could convince people to centralize their storage and catalog that storage, but it's very laborious to go and tag it all. And so a lot of times people would just make do with the file names and with the basic technical metadata that Axle already is capable of finding from the files, but they wouldn't add a whole lot of additional tagging metadata. What's really new here is that Microsoft and Google and others have developed cloud-based tagging engines where from within Axle we can submit the H.264 proxies that we generate and get back a ton of relevant information about every clip at very low cost. And what that means is that you don't have to hire interns to come do this. You don't have to take your assistant editors and make them take half their day tagging. You can get a ton of useful material about the clips pretty much by pushing a button. And we see this as a hugely significant step because it just increases the benefit of doing media management compared to leaving your drives in a closet. If they're instantly searchable, the possibilities are much, much wider than if you had to tag them yourself. It helps for finding B-roll, avoiding reshoots, putting together better edits, better quality material in the end. Because, if you remember how there was a shot with a building and a car, you might have to scrub for a whole day through material to find that shot, but these tagging systems will actually say building car, and you can search for that as if you had sat down and tagged it yourself. Now, these things are not perfect yet. They're all in their 1.0 versions. In fact, both the Google and the Microsoft products are officially in beta. We found them to be very effective, and we already have customers that are trialing them, and it looks fantastic. But the sense is that this is just the beginning, and that 6 months or a year from now, they're going to be much more powerful even and much more accurate than they are today. We're also working with on-premise companies that will actually supply software modules that you can run on-premise in conjunction with Axel, because some of our customers, like the movie studios, are just phobic about sending their stuff outside for understandable reasons. Even if it's to a reputable company like Microsoft, they're like, no way is their stuff going to the cloud. So we're being asked to bring some of this capability in-house. And our approach is that we think it should be like a Swiss Army knife. You should be able to choose the recognition engines that you want. And that list is growing week by week. In fact, just last week at their annual developer conference, Amazon announced a video recognition module, which will almost certainly be supporting next year. So you can add that to the list of Microsoft and Google, and then there's IBM Watson and others. So between them and the on-premise vendors, we think we're going to have at least a half dozen good choices, and essentially be able to give our customers a checkbox to say, okay, I want to send this folder to Microsoft, or I want to send the whole contents of this catalog to be processed by Google, etc. So we want to offer that level of choice. We also made an announcement with Microsoft before IBC this year about our partnership there. And really, we think that this type of processing is becoming more and more obvious a win for anybody that has a lot of footage that they need to work with. We've also recently come out with a cloud version of our software called Axel Media Cloud, and this is a fairly new development. So what this allows us to do is entire instances of Axel in the cloud. And we won't be focusing on Axel Media Cloud today, but just thought it was worth mentioning that we now offer essentially 10 terabytes plus 10 users in the cloud for $400 a month. And then you can add AI tagging instances to that to get additional functionality. So with that, I think I'm going to transition over to Patrice, who's going to be able to give us a demo and talk to us about kind of the nooks and crannies of this AI functionality. Because there's a lot there, and as I mentioned, it's fairly early in the process, so whatever we're doing today is likely to evolve even over the next 3 to 6 months as we're adding more capabilities for each cloud service and for each on-premise service. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Patrice. I think I heard, yep, I hear a little. Patrice, you there?
Yes, I am.
Great. All right. I think you should get the presenter dialog.
Yeah, I believe you should be able to see my screen now.
And there's a bit of noise on your microphone, by the way. It's kind of a scraping noise. So
Okay.
I don't know what that noise is. If you can kind of avoid that, that would be good.
Will do.
Okay. Handing over.
Okay, thank you, Sam. So welcome, everybody. We are very excited to show you Axel AI, we are really embracing the new artificial intelligence capabilities, because in my 10 plus years now dealing with media asset management solutions, one problem that many of our customers had, and I did not have really a magic recipe for them, was tagging their assets. Even though you will have a lot of information shown about the video in Axel, you will still need to go in and start to tag your metadata. So who is this person here? What is he doing? What do I see? Etc. So many of you are already familiar with Axel, but I'm just going to give a quick recap here. So Axel is software that runs on Mac or Linux that will monitor what is going on in your folder structure. So anything that is mounted on a Mac or on the Linux server will actually be replicated onto the web interface that Axel provides. So what are the advantages of doing that? Well, a lot of the traditional MAMs up until now will actually ask people to create collections or catalogs and check in the files. And you don't necessarily know where these files land in the end, whether you use Dalet, CatDV, Interplay, you will not necessarily know where the files are. So if the system is down, you will never be able to check them out, or it will be extremely difficult. So with Axel, let's say tomorrow my power supply goes down, the server goes down, well, you still have your drive and all the folder structure will be kept intact. If I wanted to check, for example, my catalog Axel Media, you will see that here is my Axel Media catalog, and you will see that all the folders are replicated and I have everything intact. So I can just go in, click on the folder. And so this is the quick browsing on the left side. And I will see on the main area of Axel, the thumbnails or the previews. So I can click on the clip. First thing is Axel keep track of the time code, and I can play the video. So everything that is picked up by Axel, we will create an H.264 proxy that would be available to be played on any HTML5 capable web browsers, your tablets, your phone, or phablets if you have an iPhone Plus or more. And from there, I'll be able to basically scrub on my video. It's very smooth. We are actually frame accurate. I can use the arrow keys to move frame by frame. You can see that each frame, the person is getting closer to the car. I can also play at different speed using the JKL keys. 2 times, 4 times. It's very hard to see because it's a little bit laggy over GoToWebinar, but you can also reverse as well. And from the video, we have a couple of things that we can do. So here I am. First, I can actually post a comment on the timeline, and I can, for example, select my mark-in. I can also use the mark-out using the keyboard, so I and O. And from there, I can say open door, for example. And so now I have my marker set on the video. We can also create a subclip, which will not be an additional file. It will simply be a reference to the high-res with in and out points that we will then be able to pass along to a bin, which we can use to export to your NLE of choice. And I'm going to jump to the bins at a later time. Now, all of you who have already looked at Axel are familiar with our product. I have already seen the ease of use for the interface and the appeal for many small teams for whom traditional media asset management solutions would be out of reach, whether technically or price-wise. You will see that I have additional tags now shown on the right side of my other elements. First thing is, this video has been sent to be processed by Microsoft Video Indexer. And the Microsoft tool is very powerful. It will actually return the faces it picked up. It will also return different keywords such as a car, outdoor, the person. So all these little keywords that it finds on the video, the transcript here, there is nothing returned because there is no speech, but it will do speech to text for you. And that has been quite a very popular feature. And lastly, the OCR, again, no text on the video, so hard to see. I'm going to show you more relevant video where we will have much better information. But the key is all of that is searchable. So up until now, the way you will just go about will be you will edit the metadata. And by the way, as an administrator of the system, I can go in and create my own set of custom fields. It can be text fields. It can be multiple select buttons. So I can do, for example, B-roll advertisement. Checkboxes, we have drop-down menu, we have dates as well, so I can just pick a date, and so on. So you have multiple type of metadata field that you can create that you can tailor to your workflow. And that is the old way of doing it. And all of that was just searchable, but now we have more information. Let's say, for example, I want to do a search on Bill Gates. So this is the quick search. You can create much more advanced search queries in Axel by clicking on a lens, and that will bring you the possibility, for example, to search on a file name that will contain X. And let's say I want the modification date to be less or equal than yesterday, for example, and so on. And if you have any kind of field, such as I had with location, as soon as I find it, office location here, and you have a drop-down menu, you will see that we would bring the values already. So you can create advanced search fields, or you can use the quick search. And we found that because we rely on Elasticsearch, so it provides you a quick and easy search. Just by tapping keywords, you will start to filter down. We found that 95% of our customers are just going to use the quick search. Nobody is really going to create advanced queries. But this option exists. So I perform my search on Bill Gates, and you will notice that I have a file here where the file name contains Bill Gates, so obviously it has been returned. This one, the file name also contains Bill Gates, but we have actually additional icons on the right side. The first one would be a little person, which would basically show me that the AI capabilities from Microsoft detected Bill Gates and tagged the video with Bill Gates. And you will see that we have a highlight here. And the same thing with the bubbles, which would be actually the transcript. You will have, again, Bill Gates shown. So let's go in actually in this video because we have different things. So these have been automatically tagged by Microsoft Video Indexer. They have a wide database of celebrities, sports, athletes, that are very well known, and thanks to this database, they already taught the system beforehand of these different celebrities. Now we are currently adding it into Axel, but if you remember in the first video, I have unknown. The system is able to learn who this person is, so that the future videos that are being indexed, it will be able to pick up. So obviously myself, I'm not very well known to Microsoft or to anybody in the world. So if I were to post videos with myself, I will not necessarily be automatically tagged. But if I start to tag two first videos with myself, Microsoft Engine will start to learn and reuse my name for the future videos that will be analyzed. Again, the transcript. Here we have the transcript. First of all, when I play the video, we will show you, just like we show the markers, the different transcripts. And we found it to be pretty accurate in interviews and keynote speaking. However, if you have a lot of noise, like any other speech-to-text engine, it will be quite hard to pick up. They did introduce, Microsoft recently, the possibility to submit a video and ask for noise reduction. So there may be the possibility to do a better job, and we are looking into implementing that as well. So here's the speech to text, and everything is searchable, or I can even filter. If I can type, there we go. For example, I search for the word drink, and you will see the different segment of my speech to text with the word drink. And lastly, the OCR, you will see favorite videos. So it picks up different text and will return them here. So all of that is done automatically. How will that work with Axel? Well, I have a bunch of videos, and I have here some clips. It will not be that interesting, but they are small, so I should be able to submit and get the result fast enough. And I'm going to take this jellyfish and the shipwreck video. Let's see what it will find out. So we are going to discover that together, because I have not actually tested these videos with Video Indexer from Microsoft. And here we go. So I have the option to analyze the videos. And you can pick, as an administrator, which user will have the possibility to analyze the video. Here we go. The first thing you will notice is we have one button. Again, we want to actually provide a Swiss Army knife tool where you can have more than one engine, because each engine will have their pros and cons. I showed you the power of Microsoft Video Indexer because it does a lot. Everything it finds, it will try to throw at you. So you can, Microsoft Video Indexer supports 10 languages. And the interesting thing here is I can actually send a video in one language and grab it back in another. And that is, it will not be perfect for the transcript and the speech to text, but for keywording or facial recognition, it will be good to have. Actually, it's not like you will have different names, but in Japanese, for example, it will return the name in Japanese. So I'm going to submit the videos, and here we are. These two videos now are sent, and Axel is going to send the two proxies to Microsoft Video Indexer engine, which will process and return us the information. While it's doing that, I'm going to show you now what we can do with the Google Video Intelligence API. So Google took a different approach where they only do keywording. So meaning that I can only return keywords based on what is on the video. There is no speech to text unless we use a different API. There is no facial recognition. It's only keywording. But it is actually quite a powerful keywording tool. It is almost too much. So if I wanted, for example, to go, and I'm going to start with a very small clip here, and I'll take this clip. We can see it is actually a Saab automobile. I did not tag anything, and you will see that the file name will be kind of gibberish. But if I wanted to search on Saab, it will suddenly find me this because I tagged them. Saab car project right here. Same thing with here, Saab car project. But this one, I did not tag it. But if I wanted to see, I have a small tag here, and if I look, it will find that automatically Saab automobile was tagged. So this is actually quite good. That's from that is from the Google Video Intelligence API, where it will have picked up here the AI tags is what it picked up: asphalt, automobile exterior, car, land vehicle, motor vehicle, road, side, automobile, street, and again, vehicle. All of that is tagged. So if I were to search on car or vehicle, it will return all of this information. And let me show you why it is actually powerful. And to do that, I'm going to switch back to Premiere so I can actually kill two birds with one. And it will just be an extension. So I'm just going to load my Axel extension right here, and here in my window, I'm just going to put it right here. So here we go. I choose which server I want to connect to, my username and my password, and here we are. And boom, I'm logged into my Axel database. Again, the same browsing capabilities. I can just go in, check, and just see the different folder, play the preview, and if I like it, I can import the file. Now, why did I say, let me show you why AI is critical. Let me do a search on hypercar. Oh no, is it supercar? Here we go, supercar. And I'm going to select these two clips and bring them over. Oh, they're offline. Haha. Well, imagine that they are online. Let me just redo the same search, supercar. And this goes back to what Sam was saying, which is basically someone is going to look at this video. I'm a librarian. I'm going to look at the video. And by the way, just to show you, they were offline, but I can still access the metadata, the preview, and I can still refer the file to, even if the drive is offline. So here's my clip. And this is the data returned by Google. They found Audi, Audi R8, automotive design, luxury vehicle, motor vehicle, performance car, supercar. If I were someone going to tag, what I'm going to see is say, okay, it's a race car, it's an Audi, it's an R8, period. But I will never go with luxury vehicle. I will never go with performance car. I will never go with supercar, and so on. So it's actually quite powerful. I was able to find these two clips simply by searching for supercar, which I will bet money that not everybody will have tagged these as supercar. So this is Axel AI with the search and all it entails and the auto tagging. And the same way, I do not have it plugged into my interface, but the same way that I've just showed you for the Microsoft Video Indexer submission, I can select the video, choose Analyze, and if I were to have Google AI, I will just pick Google AI. Including if I were to have an Avid workspace, I would be able to create an Avid AF file. And with that, I'll go back to you, Sam.
Yeah, and actually, thanks so much. And actually, there may be some audio dropouts on my side because I was actually just having some internet issues. So hopefully not. But
We can hear you.
As long as you can hear me, then we're doing okay. We just got a question in. So the question is, if you add information that's not on Microsoft Video Indexer, does the information you add become available for other users of Microsoft Video Indexer? A very good question. The answer is no, it does not. In other words, if you, for instance, when Video Indexer comes up with unknown person number 3, 4, 5, and 6, and you know who those people are in the context of your video, you can give it the names of those people, but those names will be private to your Microsoft Video Indexer account, and they will not be shared either for training purposes or for tagging purposes with the other people who have accounts on Microsoft Video Indexer. It is an important distinction, and it's the kind of thing that, in our experience, actually Microsoft spends time to get right. You know, because they have kind of an IT sensibility, and they have very high standards for privacy and for prevention of hacks and data sharing. You know, to varying degrees, the other companies out there also are trying to do the same thing, and we have less experience so far with Google. But even there, in their EULA, they do say that for instance, any clips that are submitted for training to them will not be used, or any clips that are submitted for tagging will not be cross-purposed for training for the general database. So it's in the EULA. I mean, again, our sense is that Microsoft is being a little more rigorous about it than I would say the typical vendor. But overall, all vendors are very sensitive to this question, and they are going out of their way to kind of preserve the privacy of their clients. Now, that being said, the 600,000 or so public figures that Microsoft does have in their database just come from their Bing search engine. So, you know, they've trained them out of Bing. And so if you're searchable in Bing, then you're probably going to be searchable in Video Indexer. As I say, right now it's up to 600,000, but in the next year or two, you can expect it'll go up to a few million people. And who knows, after that, it'll probably keep growing. So there are limits to privacy just because of the nature of the world these days, but at least you know that if you submit metadata for tagging purposes to make Video Indexer work better, it's not going to just bleed over into everybody else's data. And another question is, does Axle AI need an internet connection? If so, is there an average bandwidth that it requires? Another good question. So the answer is it does need an internet connection right now, simply because the only engines that we're supporting are cloud engines. And what we're doing to minimize the bandwidth is that we are sending these cloud engines our H.264 proxies, which are roughly 1 megabit per second. So you figure 1% of the bandwidth of a comparable 1080p HD file, and you know, even a smaller percentage if the source material is 4K. But it's still significant, and if you have thousands and thousands of clips, we're going to be trickling those up to the cloud. It is user selectable which clips and which folders you want to have analyzed, so that could generate relatively more or relatively less traffic. You also have the return trip where the metadata comes back to you from the cloud engines, but the metadata, as you'd imagine, is mostly text files and does not take a lot of network bandwidth. But it's a very reasonable question. Now, once we have on-premise engines, a lot of that goes away. It is our sense, though, that the on-premise engines will be very good at certain things, but will probably not give you the broad base of functions that, for instance, the Microsoft engine does. Well, so within Microsoft, as Patrice was showing, you've got speech-to-text, facial recognition, image recognition. They're also adding brand recognition so that you can pick up, you know, a can of Coca-Cola sitting on the counter, things like that. You know, so Microsoft is really giving you a very broad brush of capabilities. The on-premise engines tend to be a little bit more targeted and may not have the huge training set that Microsoft does. So I think where it's going to end up, if I had to guess, is that a year from now, let's say 70 or 80% of what you do will be with on-premise engines. And then when you have high value footage where you really want the utmost in tagging information, it'll be worth sending outside to one of these cloud services. Because the other thing is cost. The on-premise systems tend to price it as a flat fee per month for the engine, whereas the cloud services are actually priced per hour of footage processed. And the kinds of numbers we're seeing, they're all in beta, but the kinds of numbers that we're seeing are typically under $10 per hour, which is encouraging because that's pretty affordable. But it still means if you had $10,000 at 10,000 hours, you would be talking about $100,000. So for many people, that's going to be prohibitive, and they'll say, "Well, I've got a lot of questionable old footage. I'll run it through the on-premise engine and get some annotations." But then for the stuff that was delivered to customers or sent to air, those things are worth spending a little more money to tag in depth. And of course, since they've already aired, it's probably not a big deal to send the proxies up to the Microsoft cloud or another cloud to have them indexed. So some kind of a flexible mix like that is really the way we see things going. Let's see, if there are no additional questions, maybe we can just talk a little bit more generally about kind of the trend and how we see things going. But it's already been very, we really appreciate the turnout and also the kinds of questions we've been getting. If there's one thing that we can emphasize about this is that this is happening ridiculously fast compared to what we're used to historically. Like, we started Axel in 2012, and basically for the first 5 years of the company, we would add a few new features every year. We would typically double the scale of the product every year. So while the first version of Axel supported 30,000 clips, the current version supports 2 million clips simply because it's doubled and doubled and doubled every year. But that's the kind of incremental change that you sort of expect. Whereas AI is really coming out of left field and is unexpectedly good at this early date. So if you had asked me, say, 2 years ago, are people going to be able to just click a button and get their stuff tagged in December of 2017, I would have said probably not. It's probably going to take 5 more years, what have you. So the rate of progress has been really good. Now, there's a number of underlying reasons for this. One of them is the sheer availability of cloud computing horsepower and of data, but also even technical trends like the increasing use of NVIDIA GPUs, which speed up the training tremendously on these neural network-based deep learning algorithms that get used for image and video recognition. So just a bunch of technology trends all coming together, and now there's also a lot of investment flowing into the AI space. So in addition to the technical capabilities growing, there's also a lot of money being thrown at the problem. And of course, that works to everybody's benefit because you have well-funded R&D startups and large companies all competing to provide the most powerful, affordable AI tools. So we see our conduit to the customer as being able to take advantage of all that, for our customers. And we don't want to mark it up. Like, we've seen some other companies going into business where they're essentially brokering these things and taking the AI services that are out there and then charging a lot of money to sort of package it up, so that they may be making more money than the AI vendors are. We see our role as basically being a transparent portal, so that if you want to sign up for a Microsoft account, you can. If you want to sign up for a Google or an Amazon account, you can. And we're not going to be sitting in the middle saying, well, you have to go through us. Okay, one more question. Does all the analyzing of clips happen through the Microsoft Google indexers? If, for example, I want to find a specific person in my organization, do those clips have to be uploaded and processed through Microsoft Google indexers? So this comes back to the question of on-premise versus cloud processing. Today, if you wanted to search for those people, you would basically have two choices. You could tag them manually on-premise, so that kind of the old-fashioned way, and hire somebody to go through and do that. And we still have quite a few customers doing that today. Or send it outside in proxy form to get tagged by the Microsoft or Google indexers. There is no kind of third choice that's viable today. What we are working on, and should have well before NAB in the spring, is at least one and maybe more on-premise engines. So this is additional software that you could license from us or a partner that would plug into Axel and not require you to send things outside to get tagged in this way. But the technology is not there today, so it's not like you can just up and buy this right now. Just got another question. What is the additional cost to deploy AI on a local installation? Very good question. We are still finalizing the pricing. The general range that we see is it's going to be a monthly charge because this stuff is changing so fast that it's not a one-time purchase. Literally every month they're evolving. So we're thinking of charging in the range, depending on how much you want to do, in the range of say $200 to as much as $1,000 a month. And so $200 or $250 might cover a single engine. If you had, say, 2 or 3 engines, it would be some multiple of that. And then also for the on-premise AI capabilities, we're still figuring out the pricing there. So broadly speaking, if you think in the range of $200 to $1,000 per month per site, and then, of course, in the case of the cloud services, you would have the additional cost of whatever Microsoft or Google end up charging for their engines. Now, right now, they're in beta, and so they're effectively not charging anything as long as you kind of limit the use. I think the Microsoft one lets you do up to 100 hours a month, and the Google one is like 1,000 minutes a month or something like that for free.
Yeah.
But if you exceed those numbers, then they start charging you, and the amount they charge you is still a little bit up in the air. I think Google has a published price list. Microsoft does not, but they're giving us some guidance as to what to expect. And then you have to further complicate things because some of the services are packaged up. Like in the case of Microsoft, they include, it's basically the full menu. You get everything for one price. In the case of Google, it's a la carte, and you basically pay for the service per service. And it's as much as $6 an hour per service. So it's still early days, and so if I had to just tell you exactly what the cost was, I would be getting ahead of ourselves. But in general, $200 to $1,000 a month plus any external fees that might pertain to the usage. All right. Let's see, Patrice, are there any things that you wanted to get to that, and we've only got 5 minutes left, but any additional comments or highlights worth pointing out?
I don't think so, although I did not cover the admin pages. That may be worth to quickly take a look.
Sure, absolutely. And then, by the way, anybody who's on the call, while Patrice does that, anybody who's on the call who has some feedback for us about either the feature set of the product or kind of things that you didn't see but would like to see going forward, we are very eager to hear more. So I'll put up, as my last slide, I'll just put up our contact info again. But go ahead, Patrice.
Yeah, definitely. So again, our motto, radically simple. We try to keep it very simple. How do I set up my user and access of what they access to? Just like I would on an FTP server. So I create a user and a password, and I just choose which folder they access. Very easy. So you can just go in and say, for example, for this user, I want to add a new folder, and I'm just going to take and I choose what they can do on this specific folder. You can have different set of permissions as well. So very easy. In terms of the catalogs, you will see that I have a lot, whether they are local to my laptop or they are external volumes or NAS or SAN. You will see that you can create pretty much as many as you want. It depends then how you want to organize, but the typical setup that we see will be I catalog 1 or 2 main drives, and then I allocate the different folders to the different users. Creating an archive. Oh, I did not cover the archive actually. So with Axel, you have the possibility to offload the editing storage to either tape. We support P5 from AccuWare, and we also support Zendata. They both offer archive to cloud as well. P5 offer archive to Amazon S3. Zendata offer archive to Microsoft Azure. And us, we have also a module to archive to cloud toward using Backblaze and their B2 storage. So you have the possibility to archive to another disk, tape, or cloud using Axel. Now, if I go to the metadata field, you can pick one of your catalogs, and you will see that basically everything above this line is what I want to create new. See, if I wanted to create a new date, I can say, for example, webinar date, and I would just choose the format, and I will add a new field, and done deal. Now it's shown below. And I can replace everything easily with Axel. So for example, I have the project, it's text. I actually want to replace it to a date again. Done. Or here I have B-roll advertisements, and I say, why advertisements? Everything else is not plural. I'm just going to remove the S, and I rename this value. Everything is going to show up with the sorry, my Safari is auto-correcting me. Here we go. There we go. So now every value that had advertisements will be automatically corrected into Axel. Very easy. One thing to know is you can also import pre-existing metadata in Axel. So if you were to have a raw camera from a Canon or Hasselblad or any kind of digital cameras, we can bring the EXIF metadata. Same thing with IPTC and XMP, and we also support the doubling call from the Adobe Suite. So all of that can be brought in automatically and searchable. We are still looking into doing a two-way communication metadata between the Adobe Suite and Axel. This is something that is very high in our to-do list. This is something we are going to get to, but today it is not available. Couple new things for folks who have already seen Axel. We are pleased that now we can change the format, especially for our customers in the date format, I'm sorry, especially for our customers in Europe who are using the day before the month. Easily changeable, and you can change it back anytime. So I can change it to day, month, year, and you will see that whenever I will come back here, it will show me again. You will see the date has changed. It does not change anything in the database. It's just the format display, as well as a dark theme. We have a darker theme. Common complaint is Axel is bright. It's very harsh on my eyes if I spend hours actually tagging metadata. So we have now the possibility to basically have a much darker interface into Axel. I'm refreshing it, and now here we go. I actually found that more than half of our customers are migrating toward this interface because they like it better. So worth showing it over. And everything is still there. I can still see everything and have my metadata and can edit. All nothing has changed. It's simply the same same interface but darker. And lastly, the advanced settings. So you can see I'm browsing so fast through the admin section. Everything is pretty much pre-handled for you. You don't have to be really a tech genius to manage Axel. This is the most advanced page, and that's the scariest one. And why? It's simply because it will ask you for the domain name if you want to open your firewall, or your SMTP server settings. So these are things that it's not that obvious to know, and this is the only reason why it is the scariest page. But this is something we have a couple of guys that will help you here in the office in terms of support, and resellers are also familiar with how to set up a Microsoft Exchange or any kind of email server. And lastly, the status page, which will just show you what has been processed and how many files are in the queue for rendering the proxy. In terms of file format supported in Axel, it is extremely wide. First of all, Axel comes by default with FFmpeg, and we support all the pro formats within FFmpeg. But worst case scenario, if there is some format that we do not support, such as, for example, RED, we have also implemented with other transcoding modules that support RED. Or even if you want to look for clustering and offloading the transcoding into a much more powerful machine, we have also integrated with Amazon's Elemental transcoding servers. And you can just go full ahead, 20 transcodes at a time, and that should speed up the process dramatically from the 2 to 4 that we typically do on native Mac. And that's it, really. That's almost the hour. So Sam, unless there are any questions where I should go back in some pages, I think it's back over to you with our contact info.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks. Let me do that. So I'll just put back up my main screen. But thanks everybody for joining us. It's been really good, and I hope it's been informative. Let's see. Can you see my screen yet, or
yes?
Okay, good.
Yeah, we can see it.
Great. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Okay.
If you move it out.
I think we're good. But again, look forward to hearing more from everybody that was on the call. Have a great holiday season, and as you can tell, we're pretty pumped about all this technology coming into our world. I think it's going to make a huge difference and mean that really people can treat video like the searchable medium that it has always wanted to be, but never really was. So it's going to be a big advance, whether you're in the post-production side, the distribution side, or if you're archiving a lot of material that's already been shot. In any of those scenarios, having all this metadata is going to be a real game changer. So thanks again for spending the hour with us, and look forward to talking soon.
Thank you, everybody.